All right, next on the docket is Ivanka Trump. The first daughter, she has retained an ownership stake in her company, even though she now works for the White House. Ivanka stepped down from her fashion brand and the Trump organization, but she still stands to profit when they make money. And that's where things get tricky. The fashion company continues to do foreign deals, including lucrative trademarks in China that went through the very day that she met with the Chinese president. Coincidence. But the optics, not good here. Plus, trademark applications, they're outstanding in at least 10 other countries as we speak, including Kuwait, Panama, Brazil, and Japan. We already know that the Philippines envoy is just so happens connected to the Trump organization. So my point is, listen, I think we all got a little lesson in exposure there is or is not for a president. I think Trump learned on the fly. He said, I can do whatever I want, basically. But that's limited to him. My point is, first of all, I think this is beyond tacky, what's going on here right now. But she's going to have a problem here. With the Emoluments Clause, you cannot profit and at the same time hold an administration position right now. I don't care her last name's Trump. She doesn't get like the old man and get out of jail free card here, right?
Well, even for Trump, you invite much more scrutiny than if you stepped away. And if you go back to Dick Cheney, he stepped away from Halliburton when he was vice president. And I mean, that was very lucrative. He could have stayed there and made a lot more money than by being vice president. So that's generally what you do. And
Or you could have put in a blind trust. You could have done a whole bunch of things.
A number of things. But it invites scrutiny. It makes you question deals that otherwise wouldn't have even been considered in terms of whether
and
they
we
were
also
proper.
know that the U.S. Trademark Office has fast-tracked by every standard, objective one, how quickly she's been getting these trademarks versus she can't. And if you think about it, just from a basic level, I don't care where you work, you're at a company. All of a sudden, the owner's kid comes in and she wants something, right? You're going to do everything you can to do it because it's in your own self-interest, but also you look good to the boss.
And even more so when you're dealing with one of the world's most powerful nations economically, militarily, and otherwise. So it's in almost every other country's best interest to befriend the United States, and it doesn't hurt you to make her business interests more profitable where you are.
First of all, they said that there was no indication that the Chinese marks were fast-tracked in any way, and the company explains it by that it's a defensive filing against cyber squatting. But here's what I would underline here. The person that she has advising her is Jamie Gorelick, who is a very substantial ex-Justice Department
Times
lawyer.
gave her a great write-up. Yep.
In
New York Magazine,
the Bush administrations and the Obama administrations. So I'm sure she's getting very, very skilled and competent legal advice. And I'm
From an optics standpoint, Mark, are you telling me the day they meet with the Chinese premier, she gets a First of all, why is she doing this?
I don't know. But
why did she take a formal role in the administration?
Well, I don't care
it's not just conspiracy theories. Of course you're going to try and help out the first daughter if you want to get good relations with the U.S.
Whether she has a formal role or an informal role, I don't think really matters from a substantive point of view, because it's clear that he relies on her very heavily, whether she would be nominally in the White House or nominally outside of it. Here's what I'll say about this. There was a lot of light and intensity on the decision to bomb Syria and her alleged role in it. And if it's true as reported that she went to the President of the United States and said, this is a humanitarian tragedy and it breaks my heart to see this, do something, Daddy, and he did it, I'm all for that.
Well, but that has nothing to do with her stepping away from her personal
But Mark, here's my
business,
point.
though.
You can't be half pregnant here whether it was substance and form, there's two different things that, yes, of course, husband's there, she's going to talk to the old man and say, come on, do you see the photos, Dad, do something. That's different, but she has an official role that she consciously chose to have, and I am sorry. I am sorry. There's a reason why, to Mayo's point, not just Dick Cheney, but everyone else, A, let out their tax returns, and B, decided to put themselves in a blind trust, divest, or do something else. There's huge conflicts of interest
optics
here.
Are one thing, legalities are the other. I am not familiar with the intricacies of criminal conflicts of interest law, but I'm sure Gorelick is. This business has been put into a family trust. Supposedly she has no day-to-day control over the operations of the business except to say this has an appearance of conflict. I want it stopped. I'm confident.
You're suspending Mark's cynicism
No,
for
I'm
the
not.
first time I've ever met
No.
you. And this is
First of all, I don't
ridiculous.
think anybody really cares, because I think I think that her relationships with the Chinese government, her economic relationships, are only going to be helpful for our relationship with that country.
Oh,
but I
Mark,
trust,
come on.
I do trust.
Wait. Time out. Mayo, let me bring in this. So
We need
I
the
was told-
Chinese.
I was told for
We
a year and a
need
half. Wait a
the
minute. I was
Chinese
told
to help
for a
us
year
with
and a
North
half
Korea.
that Chinese were raping the United States with currency manipulation. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, 2 days into the office, he tells basically, or he says, I'm going to call up the Taiwanese here. We're going to talk about a two-state solution with
fine.
China, all the rest.
That's fine.
Now, magically, you know what? They don't manipulate our currency. And by the way,
If
my
we get
daughter
them
just
on-
got a trademark
if we
here
get-
to sell a handbag
If we
to
get
China.
them on board in deterring the North
Mark,
Koreans from
Mark,
to get a
you are
nuclear weapon,
conflating
no, I'm not.
policy with
No, I'm
ethics.
not. Here's what Donald Trump is, and always been:
I
a
have a lot of things
pragmatist,
that
a
you could-
pragmatist,
Pragmatist.
a deal maker, and now a politician.
Yeah, I must
if
have
he
missed that
agrees with
on
them
how,
to back off
a
currency
deal maker.
manipulation to help get them to help stop the North Koreans from getting a bomb, that's what a pragmatist
Oh my God!
does.
If you ever
That's what a
call him,
pragmatist
if you
does.
ever call him a pragmatist, this
He's a
table again,
pragmatist.
I will impale you with
No,
this
no, no,
pen.
no.
All right.
Ted
All right, I'm
Cruz
getting
and
an answer
Marco
before my head
Rubio were the
explodes here.
ideologues. Donald Trump is a
God.
pragmatist.
Yes, he's a man of his word. The first dreamer protected by the Obama administration has just been deported, and now he's filed a lawsuit against the U.S. government. Juan Montes, he came to the U.S. from Mexico when he was only 9 years old. Now he's 23. He says he was arrested and didn't have ID and proof of his protected status. So he was summarily sent back to Mexico. Then he says he was mugged in Mexico, so he climbed the border wall to get back to California. That's when he was deported again. The government is disputing some of those details, but now Homeland Security is admitting that Montes did have protected status through next year. Now that will disappoint one Steve King. Steve King is the Iowa Republican who is the loudest voice anti-immigration that we have, and he tweeted the following out after he heard about the deportation. Yes, the rocket scientist here says, first non-valedictorian dreamer deported, Border Patrol, this one's for you, and if you can't figure out, that's a stein of beer. He wins moron of the day. But Mayo, it points to a broader issue about due process and where we are right now. We're doing a lot of stuff seemingly on the fly with this. And there was a reason, and it wasn't just that the ACLU liked it, that we put some thought before we decided to send somebody to some other country. It doesn't seem that we're putting as much thought in now.
No, and yet if you expect people to have full faith and credit in your decisions and to believe what the United States says, then you have to honor the statements and the deals that were made by previous administrations. You don't have to like them, but if someone has been already given assurances by the United States government that they're not going to be deported for a year, you don't go to their house a year earlier and deport that person. And when you start to do things like that, and it's the same even when you look at treaties across the board, you talk about asking people to disarm. It's very difficult to ask North Korea to disarm when, the Libyans disarm and all of a sudden their leaders are dead. So you have to follow through.
Well,
Your
let's
word
make
has
no
to have
mistake
some
about
meaning.
This Kim Jong-un
You
or
two,
ill,
I tell
he should be
you
dead. There
two.
should be a targeted
Okay,
assassination.
you
There's no
two
question
are my
about that.
attorneys, and my gosh, I might as well be
There
moderating a
should be a
political
targeted
debate.
killing and regime
Oh,
change, but we don't have that policy.
God, Mark,
Returning to the
Mark,
subject
Mark,
at hand,
Mark,
the dreamer.
and you started this. You did this this time.
I couldn't
Mayo.
help myself.
Yeah, I
I'm
blame
sorry.
you for this.
Returning
All right.
to the subject at
All
hand.
right.
Here's what's
Thank you.
disputed on the subject at hand. There's no dispute that he's covered by the DREAM Act. The government disputes that he was deported at all in the first instance, and that'll be worked out in the lawsuit. I think what's dispositive here, and again, just like I'm not versed on criminal conflict of interest law, I don't know what the DREAM Act says. The argument has to be along the lines of what Mayo said. In order to have due process, a right to due process, you have to have a protected liberty interest. That's created by mandatory language, and I'm getting very technical here, it's created by mandatory language in a statute. So in order to have a right to any process at all, they'll have to claim that they have a vested liberty interest that's granted to them by virtue of mandatory language in the DREAM Act. Then the Trump administration would have to give them process before throwing them out. In the absence of that, and I don't know what it says, they're free to throw them out because let's face the facts, undocumented is just a nice sanitized euphemism for illegal alien. And there's an interest
no,
here
wait,
in
let's time out.
deterring
Before we
people
conflate it
from
to
bringing
something
anchor
else,
babies
time out.
into this country.
First of all, I happen to find that a really offensive term. Okay,
That's what they are.
well, that's to
Nobody
you.
says,
no, wait, Mark,
nobody
Mark,
says
Mark,
a parent
Mark,
has
Mark,
to bring
Mark,
in their child
Mark,
here
time
to
out,
get
time
to
out.
anchor them in this
If
country.
a child, first of all,
Nobody
I will tell you
says
right
a
now.
parent has to
I will
do
tell you
that.
right now. If I came in here and I was brought in as a child,
Yep.
I didn't choose to do that.
But their
Wait,
parents-
no,
but
Mark,
their
you're
parents
interrupting
did.
me. Let me
But their
finish.
parents did.
No.
Their parents
But
did.
we as a country
I
have
disagree.
taken a different approach than
disagree
you to
with you.
this. You may disagree
My
with it. but we
father
also have
came
a
into
thing-
this country from
Mark,
Germany. My
Mark,
parents came
you're
in from
talking over
Soviet
me.
Russia, and they did it in a
Well,
legal
but
way.
Mark-
It's
Mark-
not impossible.
Mark, you can't acknowledge, you have to acknowledge the fact that you have a different road to the United States if you're coming from Haiti than if you're coming from Cuba.
Soviet Russia,
Let him
political freedom.
finish, Mark.
Not everyone who comes to the United States is given the same access to this country. So you have a lot of people who are Italian and German and Irish who did not come here legally, who could have been considered anchor babies
And
if
by the
we
way,
had
you have a
gone
lot
that
of people
route.
that were taken here against their own
Absolutely
will, too.
against
Okay,
their own
so
will.
before we before we
merits
do
of
everything
this
else,
case
I'm not talking
has a-
about immigration. What I'm talking about is we have in this country, and the president has backtracked
get
on the
that.
issue of the DREAM Act. We have a thing called laws and protections. We
Depends
told
what the
these
DREAM
people,
Act
time out,
says, whether it
if
gives
it's,
them a
let
vested
me
liberty
finish.
interest.
We
That's the
told
answer.
this kid and millions of them like him, if you were brought here as a child and you didn't choose to come here, but you were brought here in this country, we as a country are going to look out for you. If it turns out that that's not what happened to this kid, shame on us.
And
All right,
Richard,
let-
Richard,
all right,
to your-
I got to hit a
I
break here,
actually
guys.
agree with
Coming
you
up
about
next, the professor who predicted that Donald Trump would get into the White House, and he was, trust me, in the minority, and I told him that at the time. Well, now he's making the case of how a president, President Trump, could get booted from that same White House sooner than later. We'll have that straight ahead.